thank you for coming in Open Conf 2021. This is the interview sessions, and today we have with us Sireesha and Benoit that will be joining us on Open Conf 2020, the May edition. Thank you, Sireesha. Thank you, Benoit, for joining us. And we will talk about their background, and also talk about their upcoming speech on OpenConf 2021, now in May 20. Sireesha, thank you for coming. And Sireesha is currently a director of engineering in Nokia, responsible for cloud native applications for fixed access, including AI and ML. Sireesha was always fascinated about science. She studied engineering, and after completing her college, she joined a startup. She soon became a computer networking expert, which led her way to Alcatel in USA, and of course, subsequently to Nokia. So, Sireesha, you were always fascinated from science from a young age. Was there a particular inspiration? Did you face potentially any obstacles during your career? And what advice do you have for someone that aspires to follow a similar career?
Thank you, Despina, for the introduction. I'm excited to be a part of this OneConf conference. Indeed, science was a big part of my life right from my childhood. And my early interest in science was mainly because of my dad, who used to work as a rocket scientist in Indian Space Research Organization. He was one of the first, I would say, few engineers that started, and this was even before when India has come into this horizon of space and launching anything into space, right? And I used to go with my dad all the time to his control center and look at several things that they used to do to get these rockets launched into space. And it was amazing to see how much they worked together day and night to get this, and they were all working towards a single goal, collaborative, and very much dedicated and passionate, right? In spite of all that, I've seen several failures. We used to see like the first few launches were definitely unsuccessful, but they never let their guard down, right? They always used it as a learning experience for the next one and always improvised on it. And that was also very important. I learned a very important lesson that there are going to be failures in life and you're supposed to learn from them. And that's something that I've seen like growing up as well. And my interest in science continued from there. And I always used to experiment with lots of little things that my dad used to bring home. And I wanted to pursue it as a career as well. I was very much interested in physics. I also had a very good teacher that used to actually explain me all these little things that used to fascinate me. And then I went on to study engineering. And with respect to obstacles, this was before I actually wanted to study engineering. A lot of people really told me in my friend circle and also relatives that engineering is not really a field for women and girls, right? It's a male-dominated world. Do you really want to be there? I mean, are you going to shine in such a big male-dominated world? This was something that I didn't take it as a negative thing, right? I just was very passionate about this. And fortunately, I also had parents who supported me and who said, you know, if you're passionate about something and if you put the hard work and if you have the dedication, you will succeed. It does not matter. There is no bias as such, right? So you will be able to get through all that. And that's essentially one of the biggest learnings that I took as well, going in life, right? So if you ask me what I would tell people that are actually coming up, my inspiration, and is actually related to my inspiration as well. If you're actually passionate about something, just put your 100% on it and with all dedication and hard work, and you will succeed. I mean, there will always be people that will question your choices, and please don't take that in a negative way. Use that as something that you can, really improve on, where you can add more value to what you're doing, right? The second thing that I would like to tell everybody is that failure is actually an inherent process to succeeding in life. Everybody goes through failures, and this is something that you have to understand as well and not get discouraged and disappointed. So always have a positive attitude and work hard towards your goal. Be passionate in what you're doing, and you'll definitely succeed in life. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sireesha. Really, really fascinating growing up, watching launches of rockets. So that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
So our colleague in Bell Labs, Alessandra Sala, said in a published article that machine learning is starting to enable services that are becoming part of our daily routines. And once again, the very core human rights of equality and inclusion are at risk of being overlooked, only on a much more significant scale. If this learning process is left unchallenged, it can lead us to biased and limited perspectives, which have practical consequences in the quality of our decision-making abilities. And indeed, there are such examples. For instance, the Amazon's AI recruiting tool. What is your view about that? And how can we change that?
Despina, indeed, a very good question. And bias in AI and ML is definitely a huge challenge. And it's something that many companies are working towards as well to eliminate, right? The key, of course, is to find the right represented data for the problem. And not just the right data, but also lots of that data in a qualitative fashion, right? That is the key. Like they say, data is always the king, right? The data also needs to be carefully analyzed for biases, and it needs to be cleaned for fair representation. That's also very important. And on top of using the right data, another thing is we have to select the right models, which is also key. There's not a single model that will work for all use cases. And often data scientists will have to evaluate and analyze the right fitting model based on your application, your use case, and also looking at the data, right? And this is also an iterative process. We can eliminate bias when we get more and more data from the field, and when we use that and train, and this has to go on. So it's not like you finish something and that's it. So it's something that goes on and on until you're really have a good representative set of data. And for example, you can also start collecting data from different regions, different demographics, etc., to eliminate some of this, or if not completely eliminate, at least reduce some of the bias, right? And this iterative process also helps in eliminating bias over time. It does take time, and that's something that people should really know. And of course, we also have some open source tools available now that will help data scientists to detect potential biases in their models after the training process. And also on top of this, there's AI regulation, of course, when applicable, that enforces some explainability and transparency of these AI models in certain domains. And not to beat the testing part, right, but which is very important, we actually have to work towards partnering with some right partners, and in our case, customers, to do some real world testing with real world data. That is key. Just because you have worked with a data that you have trained with during your development process doesn't mean that you have the right representative form and you have the right model, right? So you have to actually find these early partners that are able to collaborate with you and also work with you for this exercise. And that's also very key. These are some of the things that we can do to truly reduce the bias and also over time eliminate it. And that's very key. And we are actually looking and investigating each one of this at Nokia.
Thank you, Siri. And my last question. So I think a department responsible for AI and ML applications. Do you think that cloud native help to accelerate the IAM and ML evolution?
Oh, definitely, Despina. I see cloud native and microservices helping in lots of ways, right? I would say it's almost becoming a requirement, just not helping, right? Like if you look at microservices and how cloud native is actually empowering the AI and ML applications, you'll see there's lots and lots of ways that people are talking about. And just to mention a few things, the key to machine learning, like I mentioned earlier, is also data, and a lot of high quality data, right? So cloud native data lakes are used to store this larger, bigger data sets for used for these training processes. These are built for high availability, security, performance, scalability, and lots of things like, and also ease of management and such, which is quite important. And that's also very, very crucial for artificial intelligence and machine learning applications. In addition to that, the modularity that microservices-based architecture offers is also an asset to building ML applications. Using microservices-based approach, changes can be made into existing infrastructure without disruption, allowing improvements and the use of data tools over time, right, without much change, much disruption. Moreover, the analytical models can be created in many languages and tools, since the architecture as such allows for polyglot. And more importantly, it also allows for building easy, scalable services that can run in a decentralized manner. I mean, of course, if I actually start to list all the ways that cloud native applications are going to help this field, then it would take a long time, right? I could go over and over. These are just a few things that important things that I wanted to mention. It is definitely an integral part of artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Great, thank you. Thank you for giving us your insight about the topic. And now let's welcome Benoit. Hello, Benoit. Benoit is a senior scientist. He's a big data engineer and a distinguished member of technical staff at Nokia. Benoit is now contributing to the introduction of AI-based applications inside the Nokia Access Controller. So, Benoit, in OpenConf, we have a vision to contribute to reducing brain drain via interconnecting the local IT ecosystem. Data science is currently one of the most in-demand jobs in 2021, and it is predicted that by 2026, data science and analytics will be having more than 11 million jobs. So what is your advice to give to a young person that would like to follow a career path?
Thank you, Despina, and thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me in this event. So it's kind of funny for me to hear that question today, because not later than this morning, I just read in my newsfeed that data scientists will have disappeared in 10 years from now, which is kind of shocking or counterintuitive, to say the least. And the point was that in 10 years from now, data science or AI machine learning will be part of the toolbox of any engineer. Just like mathematics and statistics. So if I want to make the parallel with the software development, how can a software developer differentiate himself? I'm not a software developer by myself, so please allow me not to answer that question. But for a data scientist, my advice would be to focus on an area, on a domain that you like and for which you have an interest or a passion. And the key thing is that by doing that, you will have an advantage over the other data scientists. For example, you will be able to better understand the data that you are working with. It will not just be columns of numbers, but that will make sense to you. For example, you will be able to, by yourself, detect whether what you see in your data set is just an artifact because you have poor quality data, or if it's a real trend that you have detected, and then you can use to build an ML model on top of it. Another benefit from learning the domain is that you will understand the business around it. Because as a data scientist, you will train models, and those models, most of the time, will not be 100% perfect, you will have a limited accuracy, and you will have false positive and false negative. And those misclassification, those errors, will have different impacts on the domain, meaning different costs. And it's your responsibility as a data scientist to tune your model to either reduce the false negative or reduce the false positive. You cannot do both at the same time. So it's only by understanding the domain or working in close collaboration with product manager that you will be able to do that. So my advice would be to choose your domain. It can be telecommunication, like in our case in Nokia. It can be any domain where data science is heavily used, like finance, marketing, weather forecast, whatever you want, but learn the domain as well. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Benoit, for your advice, even if it is for the next 10 years. So deep learning models needs a lot of high quality data. In the meantime, there has been an explosion of data growth rate in the last years. With these extreme volumes, can we ensure data quality?
Yeah, that's a very good point here. So we are a bit in a paradoxical situation where we are collecting more and more data. We are collecting data more than ever before. And to the other end, I can tell you that most of the data scientists I know are spending most of their time in looking for good data sets. So it sounds weird, right? So there are different reasons for that, I think. The first reason is that 90% of the data that are collected today is what we call black data, meaning that the data is collected, but nobody looks at it. So it's data that is never analyzed. So different reasons here again. Either it can be that the data cannot be shared, and most probably for good reason, and usually it's because of privacy reason, and the data is not anonymized, and so it cannot be shared easily. There are some restrictions, and again, there are very good reasons for that. I'm not advocating to relax those regulations, rather the opposite. But there are, if that's the problem, there are some solutions to that. The data can be anonymized. You can scramble some private data to make your data set anonymous, and such as it can be shared with anyone respecting the regulation. Another reason, unfortunately, is that still you see a lot of what I call data silo across organization. So it can be because of a lack of coordination between different teams, or it can be because the teams are using different technologies, different formats, and things like that. So the solution to that, to my opinion, is to rely on some data sharing platform. So there are different things. There are some solutions in the open source domain. To be honest, I've not found my happiness yet in the open source world, or maybe by combining different projects, it could lead to something interesting. There are a lot of commercial solutions to that. The public cloud vendors are also proposing a solution there. So that would be my advice. We do need not only high amount of data, but we need good quality data without missing data. We need data that is correctly labeled. We must know the data type and things like that. So we must know the schema of the data. Data should be anonymized for privacy reason. The data should be shared in a secured way across organization or in between organization. And the data should be easily accessible from APIs that are easy to use. So there are plenty of solutions, but they need to be stick together. And once we have that, I think we will have we can make another step forward in the adoption of AI by companies. I would like to mention here on top of that, Nokia is providing a commercial solution called Data Marketplace that we can provide to our customers to actually market and trade their data in confidential technology. It's very exciting, based on blockchain. So that's a new technology that is appearing now to tackle that problem.
Thank you, Benoit, for your advice on ensuring data quality. So my last question is, we're currently in what is called a new AI spring. So is winter coming?
No, I don't think that winter is coming. So the AI spring that you refer to is probably the boom that we have seen a few years ago mainly in the computer vision world, and that has been driven by the breakthrough in the technology. It's only when the microprocessor and especially the GPUs became a kind of commodity, that we could really train the deeper model, where you really have a gap in the performance compared to what was possible before. But actually, the theory was developed decades ago. I think in the 80s, the convolutional neural networks were developed. It's just that we didn't have the computer or the computing power to train those models at a large scale. And when that computing power became available, we have seen the breakthrough and what you call the AI spring. But now I would rather say that we are in a kind of long summer, because the AI adoption is still progressively introduced in most of the companies, I think, and it's an evolution. It's not a revolution, so it's a slow progress. Some companies are faster than others, but it will still take quite some time before all the possibilities that AI is bringing today is actually used in wherever it can be beneficial. So I would say that now we are more in a long summer after the spring. Now, whether there will be a winter, I don't think so, because I think the AI evolution that we are seeing today is here to stay. We have real benefits. We see that in more and more projects, and this will stay, and it will be developed further. So I don't fear a winter. Now, if your question is what or when will be the next spring or the next boom, here again, I don't know, but I'm quite sure there will be one. And again, it will be driven by the technology, most probably. So you may have heard about quantum computing or neuromorphic computers, photonic neuromorphic computers, all those kinds of very exciting things that can lead to new breakthroughs. And I would not be surprised if we see another spring, another boom. I can't predict when it will be, 10 years, 20 years, I don't know, but I'm quite sure that will happen. The technology is usually not slowly and continuous progress. It has some breakthroughs, so you will see again some kind of disruptive evolution in the years to come.
Thank you for your answer about whether winter is coming. Well, we don't see that indeed. And so my last question to you, to both of you, and let's start with Sireesha. So could you give us a short insight of what you will be presenting in OpenConf 2020 for us?
Sure, Despina. So AI/ML, like we know, is commonly being talked today in almost every field, right? Of course, what we are going to talk about during this session is mainly focused on fixed networks. What we are also seeing is that fixed networks are also rapidly growing and evolving over time and becoming extremely complex, right? And as a result of that, we have to come up with better ways to manage them. And AI and ML can help in making these networks more autonomous by combining massive telemetry with closed loop control and automation. So our presentation is going to shed some light on how we're using AI ML in the heart of our network controller called Altiplano, as well as how it's used internally to improve some design of our network functions within fixed access.
Benoit, can you give us your short insight about the topic?
Yeah, so from my side, I would like to somehow demystify a bit AI. For the people who know a bit of AI, and who know that I'm working in that domain, they ask me, okay, what kind of machine learning are you doing? Is it supervised learning, unsupervised, reinforcement learning? So I would like to spend a bit of time in giving some example. I don't want to do the boring definition and that kind of stuff, but I would like to walk the audience through a few concrete examples of the different techniques we are using to develop the AI models and the different AI-driven automation things that we are developing for the network controller. Next to that, I would like also to give a bit a context around the tool chain that we are using. So from the software industry, you are probably familiar with the DevOps concept. While for AI and machine learning, we have slightly different need and extra requirements. And we call that MLOps, just to cover the operations on the tool chain specifics that we need for efficient machine learning development.
I can't wait to hear you in 2 days in OpenConf 2021 and May edition. So we will be welcome you and hearing you soon. Thank you lastly for accepting our invite and joining us. And we will have you also in a future conference to inspire our audiences. Thank you very much.